So we're going to have some closing remarks from Stephen Mankouche. Stephen Mankouche is an assistant professor of architecture at the University of Michigan. He was born in Athens. He grew up in Milan. His practice, Atelier Mankouche, focuses on issues concerning material craft and its relation to constructed space. His most recent research involves revisiting 19th century materials and technologies through contemporary digital practices. He's received a number of fellowships and awards. Most recently, Architect Magazine awarded him the 2010 R&D Award for his work with collaborators Joshua Bard and Matthew Schulte. So Stephen will give us our closing remarks.
Thanks, Joe. God, what a range of presentations. That was pretty incredible. As you can imagine, as a closing speaker, I must admit it was difficult to predict the future in terms of understanding what people were going to talk about today. So I decided to do two things. One was just to relay thoughts and questions that came to my mind as each person spoke. And the other one was just to sort of quickly talk about some things in relationship that relate to technology that sort of affect my life or are affecting my life right now. So this is kind of what I got out of it. It changes over time too, as we sort of get tired and so on. So Sheila Kennedy made me wonder how are skills disseminated to really transform consumers into producers. Ashley Schaefer made me think, can designers really release themselves of projecting the future perfect? Mark Berry said, decision-making has become a more rapid event, and I was wondering if that's a good thing. Robert Middlebrooks made me think, by storing information, does a digitization of our world enable memory loss? Are we living in the constant present? Jeffrey McKay Mason said, all spaces will be public spaces. If only I can afford a phone, was what I was thinking. Usman Haq made me reflect on what is the nature of participation with selfish and unselfish switches. How does control affect collective and individual choices? Heather Roberge makes me question, is anything really synthetic? Leah Buckley illustrated how wonderful the aesthetics of technological interfaces. For me, Leah Buckley illustrated how powerful the aesthetics of technological interface can be in empowering or dissuading users. Michael Caldwell made me think of the power of language. It reminded me how wonderful the description of a building could be. But I also was thinking, what does that say of the future? And I'm sure it does, but I'm not sure what it does yet. Walter Hood reminded me of Ashley Schaefer, so I'm like going back and forth now. Basically, it reminded me of our desire to visualize technology and fighting that desire. And I think you just spoke about that. Leah Margolis made me think, would I get distracted by the floor, by what the floor is made of in a library of materials? Could I escape the material world? Natalie reminded me, Natalie made me think, made me wonder why people from down under love Skype so much. Eric Shepard mentioned going back to remembering, or remembering not to forget. So I'm kind of losing it here, I must admit. And Amos for me, was the king of R and DIY. He also inspired me to think that if I could only quickly adjust the length of the cranks on my pedals, I could bike way faster. All right, so I'm just going to go through a couple slides of some things that are on my mind, and also do some sort of shameless pitch. All right, so basically on NPR just the other day, I was listening to this discussion about the Constitutional Convention, And they sort of reminded me that during that process, which took several months, that delegates at the convention were dissuaded from contacting their representatives of the regions of the country that they came from, because they tried to keep this convention tight. They wanted the delegates to actually vote their mind and sort of not be influenced from the outside. And I think that that's something that we're sort of constantly facing today, and sort of the idea of sort of representative democracy versus open source, and what does that sort of mean? So what I'm facing right now is this thing called Art Prize, which is sort of a local thing. It's in Michigan. It's the city of Grand Rapids. They have this wonderful art event. The entire city opens up. There are about 1,000 artists that come to the city and exhibit their work, and there's prize money involved, a lot of prize money, about $250,000, something like that. So it's kind of crazy. And the way the prizes are given out are by public judging. And so right now, there's this kind of battle online to see like who's artist, who's in the top 25 and so on. And so it's sort of this nerve-wracking sort of moment. So this is my pitch. Of course, you have to vote for me. But but what made me think is that there are these two things on the voting ballot. Is like you can vote up and you can vote down, right? So suddenly, the risks are sort of much more complex. I mean, it becomes sort of this funny world. I'm not sure sort of which way things are going to go as a result. The other thing I wanted to talk about was just sort of the idea of sort of technology maybe not being a completely linear development. And of course, the example that we all know is the case of concrete, how it sort of disappeared for centuries and then sort of reappeared. And that sort of really is kind of a reflection of my own sort of research interests, which is that of perhaps revisiting technologies that are less relevant, or questioning perhaps why they are less relevant. And maybe there are reasons for sort of reintroducing them because things have changed as a result of time, let's say. So our work that we actually are presenting at Art Prize is for this project that started through a research grant that Monica brought to the college called Research Making, and that then was supported by the university at large, is for this project that starts by looking at steam bending and this sort of simple chair designed by Thonet, and sort of re-looking at steam bending using sort of digital technology. And just to sort of sort of demonstrate quickly what that is this idea of taking something, and rather than sort of focusing on perhaps, rather than sort of focusing on, let me step back a second, but basically what the project sort of illustrates is sort of the differences between two technologies. One that was sort of introduced at the turn of the century, and that sort of really introduced the first mass-produced piece of furniture, the Thonet chair. I sort of always wondered, like, why steam bent technology? And having actually done it, we sort of realized how difficult it is. You have to sort of, it's a choreography. You actually have to kind of dance. It's a jig that you do with your friends. And you pull out this piece of steamed wood, and you have to put it in this jig. And so I was wondering, like, why did Thonet, why this chair and why steam bending? And so I think I got the clue by looking at the workers that were not wearing shoes. And it sort of made me realize, and again, this is probably my sort of prejudice, that perhaps they were not getting paid too much, because I imagine wearing shoes would be a good thing in an industrial sort of environment, which meant that the labor involved was perhaps unskilled, and therefore what this sort of did was take a unskilled sort of a technology that required perhaps little skill, but that was sort of fast and could sort of get reproduced quickly and build this these sort of small chairs that we all have. So what we did is do sort of the opposite. We kind of decided to make a large structure out of many, many little parts, sort of like think about hundreds of chairs that get assembled into this one thing, each part being different. And so we then built this thing for Grand Rapids, and it's up there now. So anyway, so that's my pitch for our work. And I'll also just want to quickly thank everybody for still being here, and please come back tomorrow. We're going to have breakfast, I think, at 9 o'clock, and the presentations will start again at 10 o'clock. Thank you.